All right, let's talk about an artist who was, well, he was part painter, part physicist, and to just about everyone else, he was a straight-up magician. His name was Arkhip Kuindzhi, and this is a guy who didn't just paint light, he seemed to paint with light itself. And to really get a sense of just how big his impact was, I want you to start with this number, 13,000. Just let that sink in. 13,000. What on earth could that number have to do with the art world way back in the 19th century? Well, that's how many people stood in line. We're talking for hours in the freezing, biting cold of a St. Petersburg winter. I mean, for that time, a crowd that size it was almost unbelievable. And here's the kicker. They weren't there for some huge, sprawling exhibition. Nope, they were all there to see one painting, a single canvas. For 2 solid weeks, this one piece of art basically held the entire city completely spellbound. And the effect it had on people was just profound. You know, another famous painter at the time, the great Ilya Repin, he described what he saw. He said people weren't just looking at a painting. They were having some kind of spiritual experience, leaving with tears in their eyes. So that just begs the question, right? What was the secret? How could a single canvas cause that much of a sensation? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock a little bit. See, Kuindzhi wasn't just another guy painting pretty landscapes. No, he was on a mission. He was trying to invent a whole new visual language to capture the feeling of nature, and more than anything else, the feeling of light. And you can really see how different his whole approach was. I mean, the art world back then, it was all about the academic tradition. Super detailed, hyper-realistic, and honestly, a little stiff. Kuindzhi, he basically just threw that whole rulebook out the window. He started using these big, bold, flat areas of color. He wasn't trying to just copy a scene. He was trying to capture its soul, its emotion. Okay, let's take his painting After the Rain. It's a perfect example. He basically boils the whole world down to 2 huge blocks of color. You've got this dark, moody storm cloud moving away, and then, bam, this incredibly bright, sun-soaked green field. So you're not just looking at a pretty picture. You can almost feel the light breaking through the clouds, you know? That incredible electric moment right after a big storm. And he absolutely perfected this with his famous birch grove. It's like he came up with a formula for sucking you right into the painting. First, look what he does. He chops off the treetops. That forces your eyes down right into the scene. Then, he uses these super intense spots of color, which makes it feel symbolic, not just literal. And the masterstroke? That insane contrast between the dark trees and the bright sunny clearing, it makes that sunlight feel so real you almost have to squint. Okay, so now that we get how he's thinking, how he's building these incredible effects, let's get back to the big mystery we started with. That one painting that had all of St. Petersburg talking, Moonlit Night on the Dnieper. People were so totally baffled by how this thing seemed to glow from within that the rumors got, well, they got pretty wild. Some folks were convinced he'd invented some kind of secret lunar paints. Others swore he was painting through special colored glass. My favorite theory? That he'd hidden one of those brand new electric lamps behind the canvas to make it light up. But the real secret wasn't magic. Honestly, it was way cooler than magic. It was a brilliant mix of physics and technique. See, Kuindzhi was actually friends with some of the top scientists of his day. We're talking guys like Dmitry Mendeleev, the chemist who created the periodic table, and he was using what he learned about optics to basically hack how our eyes perceive light. So to really understand how he pulled this off, we need to know one key term. It's called impasto. It's pretty simple, really. It just means you lay the paint on super thick, so it creates this physical texture, like it's coming right off the canvas. And for Kuindzhi, that texture, well, that was everything. Okay, so here's the genius 3-step trick. First, he displayed the painting in a totally blacked out room with just a single spotlight aimed right at it. Step 1, reflect. The moon and that glowing path on the water, he painted those with that thick, light-colored impasto, so it literally physically reflected the gallery light right back into your eyes. Step 2, absorb. The dark sky and the rest of the water were painted with a super thin layer of dark, asphalt-based paint that just soaked up the light, which made that contrast absolutely insane. And now, for step 3, this is the real magic. He actually took a tool and scraped tiny little ridges into the thick paint of the moonlight on the water. And those little ridges, they scattered the light, creating this incredible shimmering effect, like the light was actually moving. The painting wasn't glowing. He was just playing the light like an instrument. So after this unbelievable triumph, what does Kuindzhi do? The most famous artist in the country? He does the absolute last thing anyone expected. At the very height of his fame, he just disappears.
That's right. For 20 years, he entered what's called artistic seclusion. He stopped showing his work in public. He stopped selling his paintings. He just locked himself away in his studio and painted for himself. He was on a new quest now, chasing a totally different kind of light.
And this painting right here, Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, it really captures what this whole period was about for him. Take a close look. Where's the light coming from? It's not the moon, it's not the sun. The light is actually radiating from the figure of Christ. This was Kuindzhi trying to paint the impossible, a divine and uncreated light. He was using everything he knew from studying real-world sunsets to paint something completely beyond our world. You can literally watch this evolution happen in his work. Just look at how he paints the Dnieper River over time. Back in 1881, it's lush, it's detailed, it's full of life. Fast forward to 1901, during his seclusion, and wow, it's simplified, muted. It's all about the feeling of vast, empty space. And then you get to his later work, like this one of the Volga, and it's practically pure abstraction. It's just color and space, and this overwhelming sense of the cosmos. And here's the wild part. Because he was hidden away for 20 years, nobody realized it at the time, but Kuindzhi's private experiments were actually predicting where art was going to go in the 20th century. Think about it. His bold, almost decorative style, that's basically a preview of Art Nouveau and modernism. The way he cropped his paintings, these fragmented views of rooftops, that's what modernist photographers would be doing decades later. And using color for pure emotion, for spiritual themes, that's the very soul of symbolism and expressionism. The guy was just light years ahead of everyone. And so our whole understanding of him has had to evolve. Back in his day, people saw him as a magician, a master of special effects. Then, for a long time in the 20th century, he kind of got labeled as just a very talented landscape painter. But now, today, we finally see him for what he truly was, an absolute visionary. I love this contrast. The people who knew him then called him a painter of light because they were just amazed by his tricks with sunsets and moonlight. But the writers who came later, after they saw all that secret work he did, they gave him a new name, a singer of the cosmos. He literally went from painting the world to painting the entire universe. And it took us more than a century to finally appreciate just how radical, how brilliant he really was. Which kind of leaves you with one last big question, doesn't it? If it took us this long to really get Kuindzhi, whose genius are we completely missing today?